He has spoken on the topics faith, family and freedom in Cuba, Belgium, Brazil, Congo, UK and all over the USA to crowds from 14 to 40,000. International leadership speaker, trainer and coach. Author of Learn to Raw Leadership, Attitude Hack, Live a More Excellent Life, 5 Battle Strategies of a Victorious Warrior. 2021 President's Lifetime Achievement Award recipient. Founding partner of the John Maxwell team. Toastmaster International Speech Competition semi-finalist. Founder of Tell It Like It Is TV, ThatGuyRocks.com and ThatGuySpeaks.com. Creator of Story Power TV, Transforming Grace TV, and Leading Leaders Podcast. Producer of 4 TV programs and podcasts for Liftable TV and World Trumpet Television as well as multiple social media channels. Please help me welcome J. Loren Norris.
Have you ever looked at a teenager, a subordinate, someone you're training, who's done something that makes absolutely no sense at all, and ask a question like, "What were you thinking? What were you thinking?" I find that the longer you live in leadership, the more often you ask that question. And the really scary part is when you're asking the person in the mirror, "What were you thinking? Why did you do this?" That's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Subscribe now for our extensive video library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast. I know I have looked in the mirror and asked myself on more than one occasion, what were you thinking? Why are you doing that? What drives your behavior? And this is a question that really every leader should be asking to begin with. And it's not just a matter of saying, well, am I looking at the opportunity to lead as the next step in the ladder to my success? It's just part of the journey. It's just what I have to do. I've got to win this little skirmish to win the next skirmish, to be qualified for the following skirmish in order to be recognized at the highest level. I recently had an interview right here in this studio where I heard a man say, "I made my way to the top 1% of all of the people in my job. Hundreds of thousands of them in the same job. Made my way to the top 1%. That's pretty impressive." Of course, it spanned almost 4 decades of work to do that. But one of the things that he pointed out as his understanding of an essential element of not just making it to the 1% in your job, in your career, in your task, but in being a leader. He said sometimes you've got to look beyond what your assignment is, beyond the task as it's defined, beyond your job description, and you've got to find other things to get involved in to get noticed if you want to climb to the top. You can't just do the things that are on the list. You got to look for other things to do. And I said, I'm not trying to be disparaging, but for me, that's always been called politicking. Those people who, they don't just do the job in front of them. They want to have a little piece of something in everything else. If you watch this episode or these episodes very often, you know that I love a show called SEAL Team. I think it's called SEAL Team. Maybe it's just called SEALs. But as I watch it, their writers are very good at playing the emotional card, the emotional side of the people on the focus of the show. They also do a really good job of playing the political side of, well, what happens if you say this? And I don't just mean politics as in the governmental structure of politics. I mean politics like we all despise it. The one person in the group who's always trying to brown nose the leader because they always want to have the leader's attention. They've always want to, I've got your six, I've always got your back. And it doesn't just happen in a SEAL team. It happens on every team. There's always someone who's got a little bit of a power fixation, and they don't necessarily always want to be the one in power. They just want to be the one with the control. Let me say that same phrase a couple of different ways, because I remember in a marketing meeting that we were in years ago, the CEO, the VP, a couple of other people sitting around the table, and one of them said, well, we've just got to buy X kind of advertising, and then we've got to place our brand in front of these kind of people, and then we've got to really understand the demographic and how they think, et cetera, et cetera. And the CEO began to tell a story of how he was out trimming his shrubs in front of his house. And his neighbor walked over and started talking about the fact that he didn't have time to trim his shrubs. And the CEO said, well, I make time to trim my shrubs because it's good therapy for me. It's not that I can't afford somebody to trim my shrubs. I easily could. I just choose not to because I like doing this. That comment redirected their conversation, which went on then for 3 hours. Now, they hadn't known each other much up to that point, but at the end of that conversation, there were a lot of decisions that were made. Not just about trimming shrubs, about the way they were going to run their business. They realized, hey, we've got collaborative opportunities. We've got merger and acquisition opportunities. There are things that you do that I could do, that we could do better together over the shrubs. How much marketing money did that cost? Okay, so that's one way of saying I want to be closer to the access. But sometimes it's just on the golf course. Sometimes it's because the wives play tennis together, or go to yoga together, or use the same daycare or the same dry cleaner. And sometimes getting close to power doesn't seem intentional. And sometimes it's just sucking up to people. Why would you do that? Well, maybe internally you know you're not yet ready for leadership, but you sure want to be able to influence those decisions. John Maxwell tells a story about his first church and a guy named Claude, and how Claude was really the influencer in the church. And when he first came in as pastor, he thought he was going to make a whole lot of changes, and it just didn't work. But he realized Claude was the guy that had everybody's ear. And if Claude said jump, everybody jumped, and then they asked how high. And John learned early on, you've got to get the attention of Claude to go along with your plan, your idea, or it ain't going to happen. If Claude doesn't agree, nobody agrees. If Claude agrees, everybody agrees. So why bother trying to convince everybody? Just work on Claude. That's another form of that, let's get close to the leader for manipulation. There's other forms of it as well. But there's also that leader who says, I'm the second or third tier leader right now, and I want that job. And so I'm going to get close enough to understand what all the decisions are and how they're being made, and then also maybe input my 2 cents as to how I think they should be made, should have been made, could be made in the future, ought to be made. And I'm going to input my 2 cents, my insights, my wisdom, until they're accepted. Maybe it's to get close enough to the leader to sabotage the leader. But all of these are questions that you've got to be asking yourself as you look at your teammates, as you look at your subordinates, as you look at your peers. Because when you think of politics, that's what politics looks like. It looks like managing, manipulating all the mix of things that are going on in the environment, in the decision making. And sometimes those get emotional. Sometimes those get relational. Sometimes interoffice affection. People within the team who have a certain affection for each other. And this may or may not be a romantic affection. It may just be something endearing about that person. Reminds me of my grandpa, reminds me of my uncle, reminds me of my niece. And so I want to give special attention there. And sometimes it's subconscious. You catch yourself doing it. You didn't realize you were doing it. You didn't realize you were playing favorites. You like that person. I like having a chat with them. I enjoy our time over coffee. They're funny. They're fun to hang out with. And if you're not careful, you don't realize they have an agenda. You're just being you. You're just being nice. But they have an agenda. And maybe you're the target of their politicking. Maybe you're the subject of their manipulation. Maybe it's your goodwill and your good intentions that they're taking advantage of. And as a leader, you've got to know these things. Why did you want to become a leader in the first place? Was it because of the promotion? Was it because of the ladder? Did you realize it was leaning against the wrong wall later? Why did you decide I want to be a leader? Did you stumble into it? You just woke up one day and all these people were listening to you and you're like, what? What do you want me to do? Well, lead us. Tell us where we're going. I love watching the Minions because you have no idea who's in charge of them, but they all seem to follow somebody. A lot of leadership starts off like that. Nobody planned to be in charge of that. It happened, and now what? And it seems to be that the people with good character, with good decision-making ability, with strong voices, with strong opinions, and good action, meaning they take action. They don't just make decisions and send others off to do it, but they do what they say is the right idea. Those people tend to rise to the top. When there's not an appointed or assigned leader based on rank or position, when no one is told, hey, this person's in charge, well, then you find that everybody has ideas and opinions. And the best ones, well, they tend to rise to the top. Some people call that democracy. That doesn't really fit. Some people call it that, but that's not what it is. But what motivates you to be a leader? Why did you decide to be a leader? What drives the decisions that you make now? What options are placed in front of you? How do you choose the option that's the best? See, one of the challenges with motivation is that we assume everyone's motivations, everyone's motives, the purpose for the decisions that they make, the inspiration behind their thoughts and deeds and actions are pure. They're good. They're right. They made that decision with all of the information they had to. All of the past knowledge and wisdom and history, the things they've lived through are the premise for that decision. And they thought through what could go right and what could go wrong, and who will it hurt and who will it help. They've thought through all of those things before they made a decision. And after considering everything, this is the decision they made, and it is good. And we know that's not true. We know it's not true. Because we know sometimes leaders who are humans, they might be your hero. They might be somebody you look up to and you're like, wow, I hope one day to be as successful, as famous, as influential as that leader. I want to be just like them. And yet we know they're human. And because they're human, they have insecurities. They have fears. They have faults. They make mistakes. And sometimes they're on a quick cycle to repeat those mistakes, and sometimes they're on a quick cycle to correct those mistakes. And it just depends on the level of their maturity and the influence that's around them as to which side of that they might be on. But sometimes, in their humanity, they get frustrated. And they see the politicking. And they see the manipulation. And they see the people who are doing everything they can to rise to the top. They're stepping up the steps as well, but now they're on the same ladder. They want my step on the ladder? Are you kidding me? I will turn this ladder over. I will. I will stop this car. You're the one in a hurry. I will shut this whole thing down. You're the one that loses. I'm the third guy on the ladder. I don't care if it falls over. I just step off. I'm really close to the ground. But you're all the way up there. You really want to turn this thing over? See, we forget sometimes that the manipulation becomes its own motivation. The manipulation of the people on the team, the circumstances around us, the politicking, the drama, the relationships. We forget those are tools, tricks, and techniques of our opponents. Recently, I heard somebody use the phrase opponent rather than enemy. That is a significant difference in mindset. That's huge. It might be somebody who has an opposing opinion, an opposing idea, an opposing motivation, a desire for an opposing outcome. But that's all different than an enemy. Let that one settle in. By the way, that's a bonus lesson all by itself. You can just take notes on that part, opponent versus enemy, write it out, think on it for a couple of days, and then ask yourself, how many of the people in my team are opponents? I love them. I would never call them an enemy. I don't want to destroy them or see them destroyed, but I would definitely have to say we're on opposite sides of some ideas, some opinions, some causes. See, as a leader, it's easy to forget that we're surrounded by people who have different agendas. They play the game a little bit differently. Some people have no rules. Some people have very specific rules of engagement, and politics bind them. You can't say that. I mean, you could say that. You could say X, Y, and Z. But I want you to think for a moment what happens when you do. It's not that it's untrue. It might be that saying it is an exact representation of the facts as we know them, and they are true. But you probably should consider the fact that who you're saying that to, then who you're saying that about, well, they've been at the top of that ladder for a minute. And you forget they're not just standing at the top of that ladder with a lot to risk if you tip the ladder over when you're only 2 steps from the floor, but they got a lot of stuff in their pockets way up there. You have no idea what they could drop on your head. You have no idea what's over the top of that ledge that they have access to that you don't. The kind of power, the kind of influence that you may think you're going to ruin their career where they step off onto the next ledge in retirement or a cushier job or a safer environment or outside of your reach of influence. And when you speak those words, they're not untrue, and they may be damaging to their career, and they might bring their career to an end, but they might get the golden parachute anyway. And they might jump off the top of that ladder with a golden parachute in one hand and an anvil for your head in the other. And now you may have gotten even. You may have gotten justice. You may have seen them lose all of the benefits and the pros and the cons of being on the top of the ladder and having the reputation. But you're done. You're done in your career. No one will ever trust you again. You may have damaged their reputation, but you ended yours. You may have brought their career to an abrupt end, but you've also erased your opportunities. See, that's the risk of politics in any organization. And if you've led for 15 minutes, you know there's politics in every organization. It cracks me up when people say, we don't talk about politics and religion here. I'm like, well, that's great, because you just sat on that chair without a thorough investigation from the engineering department to determine whether or not that chair is going to hold yourself up. Which tells me you operate regularly on faith. No religion. And you play the game that everybody else plays, that you got to mind your P's and your Q's. You've got to bite your tongue at the right time. You've got to not offend the wrong person because they've got your career in their hand and you know it. And you don't play politics. So when you tell me that you're leaving politics and religion out, either you're an ostrich and your head is buried in the sand, or you're a liar and you know it, which is another form of manipulation to tell me that you don't engage in politics and religion when we all know that you do because you don't have a choice. It's like saying I live on earth, but I don't breathe oxygen. Well, of course you do. Of course you do. You may not acknowledge it, but it's still true. So let me ask the same question yet again. Why did you do that? What were you thinking when you decided to become a leader? When you decided I want to have influence? When you looked up to the top of that ladder and you went, that one's got to go and I'm going to have to take their place. When you made the conscious effort to throw your hat in the ring, to put your name on the ballot, to apply for the job, to get that degree in that career field, what were you thinking? I recently had a conversation with someone who said, when they started on their journey of faith, reading the Bible was the way they said it, that all of a sudden they realized the way they treated the people around them changed. And I said, it's not uncommon that when you change the lens, it's like being at the eye doctor and they flip the little thing back and forth. They're like, which one do you see better? Do you see better through this one or through that one? Is it better on 1 or 2, A or B, 3 or 4, 3 or C? And as they go back and forth, you realize things are getting a little clearer and a little clearer and a little clearer. And wow, all of a sudden I can see things I didn't know were there. Well, that's what happens when faith is committed to in your life. It changes the way you make decisions. It changes the way you see, most specifically, yourself and other people. That changes your motivations. And this individual said, when I started on this faith journey, when I started reading my Bible, I realized I've been spending most of my life living in fear of what other people would do to me. And all of a sudden, I'm not seeing these people as someone who wants to attack me and destroy me, but as people who are hurt and they need my help. And I thought, that's a great metaphor for leadership, because often we look at the person at the top of the ladder and we think, well, how many heads did they have to step on to get there? And then we wonder, think back, just go watch a basic training video or a BUDS training video or a SEAL team in action or firefighters in action. We all have the same motivation as leaders. It's not just to get me over the wall. It's to get everybody over the wall. And when you watch a team, a genuine team, and the first person runs to the wall and kneels down, and the next person jumps on their back, and the third person steps on the guy who's kneeling and climbs the back of the next person and climbs to create the third rung on the ladder, and then the fourth person runs up all 3 of them and over the wall. And what do when they get over the wall? They don't stop at the top of the wall and wave. They don't climb over the wall and keep running. They stop. They turn around and they reach back for number 5, 6, 7, and 15. And they wait at the top of that wall until there's another beside them, and now there's 2 people to pull everybody up. And they complete that process until the last person, the one who knelt at the bottom, that everybody on the team stepped on to get up, has to jump. But there are 3 or 4 people reaching for their arms, reaching for their legs, reaching to pull them over the wall. See, that's what a team looks like. It doesn't look like that second person going, hey, I stepped on his back to get up here, but now that I've reached the wall, baby, I am gone. No. Turn around, reach back, and help people. Why do you do what you do? What motivates you? Is it revenge? Is it getting even? Well, we like to think there's a direct line between the things that we've learned in the past, the mistakes we've made, the successes we've had, and the decisions we make for our future, but often there is not. It's interrupted by, well, I'm not letting you up my ladder. I'll set the ladder on fire. You've probably all seen the memes on Facebook where the guy's got all the materials to build a ladder out of the pit. One builds a ladder and climbs out of the pit. The other one uses the ladder as firewood to remain in the pit and mope around in the cold. And when all the lumber is burned up, there is neither ladder nor fire. See, sometimes we get leaders who are so bent on revenge, so bent on winning the political game, they'll climb to the top and pull the ladder up behind them. Or they'll push off the wall with everybody on the ladder. They're okay with mutual destruction as long as you don't win. What motivates you to be a leader? What motivated you to get in the game in the first place? Why do you stay? What were you thinking? Were you thinking I can get over that wall and pull more people over with me? I can find success and help others rise up to it? I can get past this struggle and prove to others it's worth it? Or were you thinking if I've got enough people to step on, I can get to the top really fast? What motivated you to become a leader and stay in the game? Foresight, hindsight, and insight. That's what it means to have a vision. If you have not applied those questions to your own life, start now. What motivated you to get in the leadership game? And why are you still here? I'm Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.
Loren is a master teacher on storytelling, and I learned so much. I'm really going to have to sit down and go back through everything, and I think I might have to have some more coffees with Loren, but it was totally worth my time, and I really highly recommend it if you're looking to grow your ministry, grow your business, grow your career. Loren will serve you well.